Okay, well, welcome back to another Roundtable Live. We have kind of a current exciting one for you guys today. I'm pretty excited to dive into this because I think the implications of what happened is going to be really cool. But just first, if you don't know these people, which you probably do, we'll do the pleasantries and introduce you anyway. So we got Daniel Keys, who's the recently new appointed CEO of EOS Nation. We got Chaney Moore, who is the, I think, CBO of Cryptowriter and the kind of like an outspoken community leader for a long time in the space. And joining us a little bit later, he's running late, will be John Heeter of Boyd, and he's kind of a programmer coder, and he's worked on a few DACs and DeFi projects in the EOS IO and EOS space as well. So welcome, guys. Oh, and Corey, don't forget, one of my favorite people in the world, Corey. So welcome, guys. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. Obviously, challenging times, but yeah, looking forward to talking through what we learned and what our perspective is on the situation.
Always glad to join you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I think maybe we'll do some gratitudes, and then we can jump in a little bit. In the notes below, I linked your retrospective that was on the EOS website. So if you haven't had a chance to read that, you can probably catch it later. But basically, you guys went through the series of events that led up to it, the series of events that like closed it out, and then the things that kind of happened after. So and what we're going to be talking about is the EOSX hack. I know Chaney's got tons of questions. I've got a couple interesting questions, but I want to put in the gratitude first. And yeah,
sure. Hey, I'll start out today. I had several friends that I got a couple. Several friends that were liquidated yesterday. They weren't quite aligned to set that up and lost majority of their wealth and crypto wealth. With the big dip yesterday, so they're having hard times. But I just want to remind everybody that there are other things to life besides this, and we can be grateful for our health and our friends and our family. So I'm grateful for everything outside of crypto this morning.
I like it. That's awesome. Yeah.
I'll go. I'm grateful to be here. Have the opportunity to have this conversation, share my perspective. Grateful for this amazing community we have, and the bright future of EOS.
I have to edit that down a little bit. Grateful for the bright future of EOS.
It goes up on the wall. That's cool.
Oh yeah, it's going up on the wall permanently. This is the Uplifter Tower in the Uplift.
This is my first time giving gratitude. That's cool.
We have a very special one that we put up on the back.
I'll show it in a second.
Behind you.
For this particular week. Yeah, Jimmy had us put this thing up.
That's the well-deserved.
Right.
And there's an inside joke here, but there's the reality of what happens, with all of things in crypto, and I'm grateful for open doors, because like Chaney said, right? There's a lot of people in the world out there that are trading crypto. They're losing, they've lost money because they've over leveraged themselves. There are a lot of people that got affected or get affected every day by hacks. And I like the fact that this is a learning space, and a lot of projects are learning to become better all the time, even though sometimes it hurts, right? I mean,
I'm grateful for massive dips and good risk allocation.
Yeah. I mean,
it's an opportunity if you're prepared, right?
And this is the thing,
grateful for dip opportunities.
Right, and this is the thing. Like, look, it doesn't take a huge historical analysis of Bitcoin cycles to realize that a 40+% dip is going to happen in every bull market, probably twice, maybe more. So, not being prepared for that. This is the thing. Like watching people stay over leveraged. I'm like that. What? Just no. Just don't. Just maybe don't do it. Because getting wiped out sucks.
I think you might have just coined something there. You're grateful for DOPS. I like it.
I'll throw one more up there since I'm here.
Yeah.
You know, he's got a lot of both gratitudes and shit lately, but thankful for Evel Rose and all he's done for EOS.
Yeah, I will definitely echo that. And everything he's done for EOS Nation, he's set us up for success. I'm inheriting a really strong business here. Big shoes to fill.
Might as well just put everyone. Everyone's
Right? Yeah.
all EOS.
I mean, I'll say this, like I worked for a couple BPs and, been in touch with many more. And I like the way that you guys have this public face and you all are focused on different things. If I don't blow away because of the rainstorm outside, sorry about that. It's like a hurricane out there. Like I think it's interesting how you guys are also outward looking to the community. Like we said, Daniel, we've had many on the show and you all have your expertise and it's really cool. So but let's I love this little jungle thing. Let's dive in and maybe Daniel, if you want to go first, do you want to kind of explain whatever you want to explain really, but maybe I think most people know what happened, but maybe just quickly what happened and what came out of it.
Sure. Yeah, definitely would recommend that you check out the retrospective if you haven't. But in summary, as I'm sure most of you watching know, on Friday, about 1.2 million EOS and 460 odd thousand USDT were stolen from the vault. We spent the day really scrambling, trying to contain the situation, investigate, identify the attacker, communicate with the attacker, offer a bounty. We did everything that we could with the time that we had to contain the situation, and obviously keep this community informed. By the end of the day, the attacker had dispersed all of the funds across about 250 accounts, a little less, 5,000 EOS in each. Was at any moment at risk of leaving through no KYC exchanges. We had a very difficult decision to make, not one that we took lightly. Required obviously the consensus of 15 of the 21 block producers. If it wasn't for the full day of investigation, my entire team was on it, building the case, investigating, speaking to all the stakeholders. Really, it was a full day of consensus building to reach that point where the consensus was it's better for EOS that we stop this hack than let it go.
I'll add some caveats there. EOS has experienced blacklists before. Blacklists require all 21 block producers, and he does go into that in the introspective or the retrospective. I did put that in the chat out there for anybody that hasn't read that yet. Go out there and pull it up and go through it. But for a blacklist to work on EOS, all active BPs, all 21, must have the same blacklist to keep accounts from actually actively doing anything on and presenting transactions to the network. We've had different lists over the years: white lists, gray lists, black lists, but they don't work, especially when BPs change out and they don't have the same blacklist. So I will think, Daniel, you can tell me the actions that EOS Nation and the BPs took this time was a first in EOS, where you said, okay, blacklists aren't working. We're going to change the keys of an account to protect these funds, which, strangely enough, requires less BP consensus than a blacklist does. A blacklist, which doesn't do anything, says, hey, you can't do transactions. The 15 or 21 BPs can change the keys on EOS. So is that the first time that's happened?
It's the first time that's happened. Yes, we have used blacklists in the past, but as you said, yeah, they do require all 21 of the active block producers to have them in place for them to be effective. In this case, there was not time to reach that level of consensus. We did have the 15 consensus to do the nulling of the keys, which was a first. We viewed that as our only option to slow things down, to pause things, buy us some time. And if you read the retrospective, you'll see that over the course of that time, the attacker actually contacted Eve. There was a dialogue. He apologized. He didn't want it to get to the point that it did. Unfortunately, I think
because we end up talking to people who do dumb crap in the uplift all the time, and is there any credibility to that at all? It just sounds like, because I saw some of the things that he said and stuff like that, and I'm just like, this is adorable bullshit.
Yeah.
Am I wrong about that? Because I'm open to be wrong about that. I just don't.
So he hinted to the
ridiculous
fact that the bounty we offered was not large enough.
There it is.
He didn't say it in so many words.
Right.
He never said that at any point, as far as I know, in the conversation, even between him and Eve. I spoke to Eve about the conversation they had.
Right.
And then if you read the post he made, he alluded, he posted a link to the lessons learned article written by Dexaran, which talks about kind of the best practices for bounty, and 10% being probably where you want to shoot for. What I would say to him is, if he wanted 10%, why didn't he just send 90% back?
Totally agree.
That would have been an easy solution for him to get 10%, and I think the result would have been different if that was the case.
Well, and I think that was out there already. When the T. Michael, I think that was out there
already. Himself in the dick right now.
Sorry,
what? Sorry, I was just making shitty jokes.
That's all right. I think that was already out there in the C. Michael post that was wrote before the decision was made, right? Like that if you just give the 90% back instead of taking the 10. So like Corey said, it seems overtly dumb. It seems to me like, oh shit, I got caught and I was expecting to get away with it. That's what it seems to me, right? Whether it's right or whether it's wrong, it's like, oh shit, I never thought that was going to happen, and now I'm fucked.
In my corporate job, I do a lot of contract negotiations, and if he had just expressed any intent to be a white hat hacker and sent any amount of funds back, say 10%, kept 90%, sent 10% back, and said, I'm open to discussion.
Right. That's a point to open a discussion right there. Yeah. As soon as he started distributing the funds across hundreds of accounts, that conversation was over.
He lost credibility. So let's be clear. There's no point in human culture, blockchain and code aside, in human culture where we have these discussions about a thief being in their rights as a thief, right? Code is law, that's fine. Yeah, Jimmy, I'm going to come in your house and I have a key to your house because you dropped it outside, and I can have access to your things now. We as a culture would not accept that in humanity, to say, hey, there are contracts and there are lawyers and there are other things that you deal with for that reason, because some things are muddier. But in this case, there was a thief, is recognized as a thief, and he was punished. The question that arises, at least with EOS and with blockchain in general, is who should have the power to police that?
Yep.
And what are the guidelines for that police power? And the trouble that the community is struggling with here, not from the standpoint that it was bad. Everybody agrees. And I had lots of friends that had lots of funds, and I've used EOSX. It just didn't happen to have anything in there at the time. But the question is, one, what are we going to do going forward to make sure that this is a fair and equitable system for any EOS DeFi or any EOS DApp that wants to have similar protections. And two, a very blunt and straightforward question, Daniel. Would this have happened if it wasn't EOSX or another BP-led project? Because we've seen other hacks, maybe like you said in retrospective, it wasn't. It was maybe one of the first times where it was open sourced, audited, and MSIG'd. And that may be the case, is that it happened fast and the response was fast. If it wasn't EOSX or another BP-led project, would it have happened that way?
Sure. I'll start with the first question. What do we do? I don't know. It's a very big, difficult question to answer. That's going to require many different stakeholders to come to the table to come to consensus. All I can say is that I see the gap. EOS Nation recognizes that there is a gap, and we're happy to participate in that conversation. We don't have the answers. We threw all kinds of ideas around as we were going through the retrospective. We even, an earlier draft had some recommendations, but as we continued to validate those with stakeholders, we realized we're not in a position to be making any recommendations in a silo. This is going to be a much bigger effort to determine the right path forward. The second question, whether or not if another DeFi app had the same thing happen to it and it wasn't EOSX, would the same thing happen? I can't say. I would say they would probably have so EOS Nation spent the last 3 years building a strong reputation, building relationships with all of the key stakeholders, building up a product that met all of the industry standards, trust of the community, all of our stakeholders. We're a block producer. That's not something that is unique. Like anybody in the community has the same opportunity to build the same strong connections with stakeholders. I definitely think an application that has those strong connections has a stronger chance of being successful at reaching that type of consensus. And I also I imagine that the most successful DeFi apps will naturally have a lot of those. I imagine a lot of the biggest DeFi apps will actually be block producers.
So you think like DeFi box and Nudex, if they were hacked, would see a similar response due to their expansive reach within the community?
Yeah, I say again, we barely pulled it off ourselves. So again, it's really hard to predict whether they would reach the same outcome, but I would say they have a similar shot.
So what we're really saying there is, like, as long as you have friends, you have a good shot, right? Like this is
it's not.
I know it's not friends. I know it's a lot more complicated than that. And I don't want to discount the work that you guys have done that's created this credibility, because that's what it is, right? It's not just like, oh, hey, we hung out and had a beer. Like that, you guys have been creating a lot of value in the space, and that's where your reputation, your credibility comes from.
We've proven ourselves consistently over the course of over 3 years.
But at some point, do we not have to get to the point where the rules are such that the law can be blind to this?
Yeah,
and
I would love to see
a political thing, right? Like, and maybe we can't do that because, like, we have this thing with EOS and where it really is sort of a democratic oligarchy, right? Like it comes down to the people that have all the assets that are producing all of the things are making all the decisions. And honestly, like for a financial instrument, it's not super crazy, right? But that was sort of like, do you have any, I guess, is there anything that you know now for certain that might go onto a list of things that we might look at for a third party thing that would basically like lift it off of this purely, not purely, but like the sort of a political end of it, right? Where those relationships matter, and maybe where it could actually just be a more data centric and rules based function.
Sure. So what I'll prelude with is, again, the amount of effort that has to go into a recovery like this is huge. It's a huge cost. My team, there's probably 10 of us full time all day on this. That's just our team alone, not to mention all of the other teams we were coordinating with. and that was just on the day of the hack. The last 5 days, this has been my life.
Yeah, I bet.
You know, dealing with the aftermath. So, you know, we can't
Trial
be
by fire.
investigating every single instance of fraud or there has to be some. And yeah, I agree. I would love to see a world where there was a place that the little guy could go to get at least some direction and some help, and I think where that's going to happen is on the second layer. You know, I'm really bullish on all the work that's happening with Eden. Like, again, I'm going to be throwing some ideas out there. Don't take anything I say now as something we're committing to, something that we think is a good idea. Again, these are all discussions we're going to have much more broadly with more stakeholders. Again, I had lots of ideas that as soon as I validated them with a stakeholder in a different position than I was coming from, I realized, okay, that's a dumb idea. So these ideas I threw out may face the same scrutiny. But what if, for example, there was an elected Eden body that dealt with you know, these types of issues? They were the ones who build those relationships with the key stakeholders. You know, over time, they're gonna be very well connected with all the block producers. They'll have a budget and a mandate to specifically, this is what we do. We handle these. You know, we've got funding coming in. We've got staff that specializes in investigating these scenarios. And they're an elected body, not like ECAF. And I think there's definitely an opportunity for something like that. There's perhaps even an opportunity to delegate certain responsibilities. You know, currently the block producers are the ones who maybe there are tools to delegate to other layers that offer some of those protections. The biggest, I think the thing we should be most focused on though is prevention. Like right now, EOS is the Wild West. We're still establishing the well-managed, good businesses. The UIs haven't caught up to the capabilities of EOS, for example. You know, we've got all these great opportunities to set up account permissions and timers and things to protect your personal property that the average user can't use it. If we focus as a community to build more user-friendly tools, that alone is going to go a long way to prevent a lot of the things like the phishing scams that we're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen this asked a lot, and I see them in the chat, and I've had other people, and I've had the same question. I saw that EU had no funds personally in the vault. Did you personally have funds in the vault, and did other BPs that made the action to freeze the funds have funds in the vault?
I had personally fund, not a lot. It was a very small percentage of my crypto portfolio. I can't really speculate as to what other BP. I know that there were perhaps some that had, again, perhaps a little bit amount. EOS Nation had less than 10% of our treasury in the vault. I can definitely tell you that our personal holdings in the vault had no bearing on the actions we took. We were much more concerned about the human suffering from all of the depositors and the implications of, you know, what happens when an audited, MSIG'd, open source DeFi product that everyone had all their trust in, suddenly you can't trust that anymore. Does that shake the faith of DeFi on EOS? And what we believed was that yes, it would, and this was the better route. We use the tools that we had at our disposal. Whether those tools are, you know, appropriate going forward, you know, again, we would love to see the chain evolve to make this sort of thing cleaner in the future.
Well, somebody had to test it eventually, right? And so, like, as far as even the trust in the ecosystem, I'm, you know, and I thought about this a lot. Like, at the end of the day, I think I'm for it. And like, I think we had what was the guy's name? Jimmy from Eden, the guy that
Chris Barnes, I think.
Barnes, great guy. And the idea that would sort of serve as a voice of the community function is very interesting. I think that's not.
And again, they're gonna have a budget. Hopefully, we'll see. We still haven't seen,
right,
you know, what exactly that will be and where it will come from. But a budget's important. Like it costs money to do these types of investigations. So to have a budget and a mandate to make that your responsibility would go a long way.
So I'll see in the question here, I see some people in the audience asking what happens when governments come forward asking BPs to do key swaps. And that's the good thing about decentralization, to the aspect that, hey, you would require 15 BPs to be actively hit by governments at the same time across the world before such times where they can be voted out by those that have the ability to do so. So you're going to have governments put pressure on 15 BPs. Now, people say, well, Chinese, we have 15 Chinese BPs. It'll have to be a very swift, coercive act by governments that threaten the abilities of those BPs to make that happen in a quick amount of time. I will say that I did recommend EOSX Vault, the EOS Nation Vault, to other people. I did have half a dozen friends that had funds in the vault at the time, some that lost very significant amounts of their crypto wealth because it was assumed to be audited, it was assumed to be safe, as that's the case, which obviously never is. But we would have lost some very, very good members of the EOS community if this had gone through. So it's troubling, but it is something I'm glad that you guys have acted.
As upsetting as the situation was, I do think the silver lining is it's surfaced an opportunity. I was reading Dan's book right now, and I was just reading the chapter on independence. And there's a couple pages where he's talking about how uncomfortable disruption can be, but how important it is to become more resilient against disruption going forward. And he gave the example of a forest fire, clearing out the dead brush. But if we become too dependent on the kind of structures that protect forests from burning, it gets to a point where that fire eventually becomes out of control and the whole forest burns down. I think we were lucky that EOS right now is in a position to potentially explode and have much more people participating, much more capital, and this hack and this opportunity was exposed at a time where we're still growing and have the opportunity now to learn from it.
I will say this may be an endorsement for not open sourcing everything. Whether or not this would have occurred without open source code, I think there may be the case to be said that if there are trusted, well-known entities that have audited MSIG code out there, that perhaps there are situations where there's large amount of funds that to be protected. You don't open source that code and invite hackers and people to test it externally, because there are smart people in the world, and there are smarter people than us in the world, and people will eventually probably find hacks. So just keep that in mind going forward, guys. Just because something's open sourced and you can see it, sometimes it's better to have entities that you do trust.
Yeah,
That's
I don't know
if
the open sourceness of it had anything to do. From what I gathered, the hackers seemed to had spent time he was live trying different things out to find the exploit. Whether that involved also looking at the code at the same time, I'm not sure.
Speaking of very smart people, we have a room full of very smart people, and another one just joined. Hi, John. Welcome. I don't know. Do you have a comment on that? Like, what do you think? Is that a risk to have an open source code in terms of hackability, or do you think it's a mute point?
It's like Daniel said. Honestly, it's not that big of a deal. Like, if the vulnerability is there, you can ping it enough times and find the vulnerability anyways. The code, having the code open source might make it easier to find obvious exploits without, doing the work. But when it's audited by two parties, you would assume all of the easy exploits that you could see by looking at the code are gone, right? So,
and they were.
I would say if it's not audited, you're more secure not open sourcing it, because then you have at least a bit of a buffer, to keep people from trying to break it. If it is audited and and considered to be very safe and secure, and also it has deposits, it has a community around it, it has reputable people behind it, then open sourcing it is like a bonus. But it's really not totally necessary. I don't think that I don't think that many people would not use the vault because it wasn't open source, when considering the audits and considering who's on the MSIG, right? So you have to keep
considering how many users have the ability to read the code and understand what it says. I mean, I personally dabble very little in it, and I didn't go out to check the code to make sure it was okay. Now maybe people do.
I'm not suggesting that everyone that deposits would check.
I know that some of our users do. We've heard from them.
I'm not saying that. Yeah, I'm not saying that everyone that deposits, but there's lots of programmers in the community that do take a look at it and weigh in on what they think about it.
Yeah.
So I have a kind of a question. I wrote an article when vaults kind of launched about it, and so I talked to a bunch of the people that were involved in making it, and from my understanding, it has very similar underpinnings and workings to the Rex contract. And so like the vulnerability I think that was found on the flash loan side of it, right?
Yep.
Not on the Rex side of it. So just to clarify that. Okay. That's I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, it was a re-entry attack exploit on the flash loan.
One of the things that we talk about with deposits is that, is a little bit, you mentioned earlier, an oligarchy. Are you aware, Daniel, of any movements from whales or other large stakeholders that were so proponents of this happening that they were willing to move votes around to move the BPs to get this lock to occur?
There was one BP moved into position to facilitate the expedited signing, but actually it didn't end up coming into. We ended up receiving the 15 before their vote was needed, but that was something in progress.
Okay, so
that's funny. I'm gonna get myself banned here, but when you were talking about like one country, I was like, hey, well, I mean, if China shuts down crypto, then like just vote the Chinese BPs out. Right? It goes both ways, and I'm totally like gonna get thrown out of the community for that, right? But I think that's a really good question, right? Like, like how does that? Because I'm personally for it. Like I think Corey said this too, but I'm personally for it. As a person who doesn't understand code, like I think this is a huge opportunity for EOS to be able to pull in those big institutions, right? Especially with Bullish coming out, especially with the Eden governments coming out, so to me, this kind of, as shitty as it is, it kind of says that like if there's a protocol that's in place whereby these rules are followed, right? And this even put a smart contract into place where these rules are followed, all these things are accounted for, you have these BPs that are already on board to sign it. So it's not a case by case, who do you know type of scenario, right? Like, and I think that maybe could be potentially brought in with like some connection with Eden or some outside connection or something like that. Like, rather than just having the BPs say it, maybe the proposal needs to come from the Eden community, right? And
absolutely.
So I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I see this again. It's a broad conversation, many stakeholders involved. I don't see it as in scope of EOS Nation to solve this problem. Again, we're just one of many participants. We're not going to be going out trying to organize this conversation to happen. I think Eden is in a much better position right now, from what I can see of all the forums of community consensus out there. I think I've got a lot of good thoughts about what might come out of Eden.
Well, I bring that point up because there are several community members and other people I've seen in conversation that mentioned, well, the community didn't react, and these BPs should have been voted out after this happened, and a general outrage of 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 the powers that were used to protect the community. And I will say that that's DPoS. I mean,
Right.
the people with the tokens to vote have shown their support for what happened because you have not seen a shakeup within the BPs that are there. The general support of the community overall has been pretty positive. There's people that are upset. I honestly am not fully on board with the way it happened, not from the standpoint that I didn't like the outcome. Like I said before, just I don't think it was clean. I think it just the fact that EOS Nation did it kind of made it look dirty at appearance, no matter how good the retrospective is and how impeccable EOS Nation's and Eve and in general most of the BPs were at the time.
Yeah.
It leaves it dirty, and then finally, like I said before, it just wasn't clear of didn't go in with the EUA. It wasn't a clear guidance or governance to take action for it, and it's just not clean. So
Okay, well, I mean, to say it's not clean, that's a very kind of subjective way of describing something. I mean, what happened is everything that happened was allowed by the code base, and the understanding of how the code base works has been well propagated. Before EOS even launched, there was an understanding of how this chain works and what makes EOS unique from Ethereum. And this is actually one of the selling points of EOS and of the EOS.io code base, is that the BPs can do this. The problem is that you have a lot of people that invested that didn't understand that or didn't agree with that.
Well, and I think though, John, that the BP signed the EUA, and number 789 of the EUA says they will not change the keys, and the BP may have gotten retroactive approval from the hacker to say, yeah, go ahead and transfer these funds out. And I kudos to them for doing so. But there was a signed EUA, right? And it was, and that stands for EOS User Agreement, right? It wasn't quite followed. So we had some governance in line. It's been in line since 2019 after we did away with the EOS Constitution. So that's when I come back and say it wasn't clean. I'm not saying that the chain didn't have the power and the chain shouldn't use that power. I'm just saying that there were documents in place that were signed by BPs that said they wouldn't do that, and we had no other guidance to say when they would not take action like that. It's clean from a personal perspective, not a chain perspective.
I totally agree that like, for example, like I wasn't a big proponent of the EUA. I mean, I wasn't a big, the original Constitution had lots of problems. The EUA felt kind of like just a stand-in because it's very simple. But I felt like if we're going to go with a code as law type of chain and we don't want BP intervention at all, the functionality to do that should have been removed from the code. And the fact that it was not removed left like this gap where it's like, well, we can, but we said we wouldn't. Whereas it really should be, we can't, and we said we won't. we can, the only way we could would be a hard fork, right? If that's what the community wants, we should have hard forked to a code base that would enforce those rules. So yeah, but I agree with you. I understand what you mean about the EUA. That was kind of the social consensus about what was supposed to be happening, and that wasn't really followed to the T.
I agree that I like funds being protected to the standpoint that we agree to them, and that there is inconsistency is scary. I like that. Yeah, to the point where I would like my funds protected. If I was an EOSX, I would like my funds back. I did not consent to them being stolen. If I was in DeFi Box or eCurve or DAD or half a dozen other projects that I use on a regular basis, I'm not consenting to have my funds stolen or hacked, and I would like to have that protection in place and have set guidelines to know that my what are the reasons, what can occur that would result in me receiving my funds back in a safe manner. That's all I'm saying in that regards. It's a shame this happened, guys. I felt like we were in such a good trajectory here the last few weeks. You know, we have a lot of positive things coming out. Hopefully, we'll see
I just
some
want to
good
jump
things
in.
happening
Yeah,
again.
Chaney,
Yeah.
I think this is positive. And I know, you know, it has been, because one of the things that I, you know, started looking at in EOS when I first started reading about it is like, this is a possibility, right? There is the possibility that you know, funds can be protected in this way. And again, like, you know, we can, and I think it's a great discussion. We can have discussion about, okay, well, this is how it happened the first time. These are the things that need to be improved or whatever. Like, we found these areas, right? Like these are the things that we could code in that will make something like this simpler to do and something that we as a community can trust more moving forward, right? And I think that is ultimately really, really good. Like, it's been tested, we can iterate now, and those things will get done. We're on this cusp now in EOS where it can actually be a center for DeFi. Institutions are you know, probably looking at it right now, and now this has happened. And if I'm an institution, I want to bring institutional money into you know, a protocol that will allow for and be good at DeFi. This is make or break for me, right? So yeah, it, like, in the very short term, I think it's you know, harsh and scary, and inconsistency is bad, end. But I mean, we could see like an actual flourishing of EOS as DeFi Central over the next 3 months, specifically because this happened. And, you know, we had to face this as a community and figure it out. And, you know, ultimately BPs did protect the funds, right?
The results may be good. I'm just saying the timing was bad. We had, you know, a bullish announcement. We've got the crowdfunding announcement that will hopefully come out here shortly. I think this was a distraction. You know, there were all sorts of good positive momentum we had. I'm not saying it won't, end result won't be good. I think the governance discussions in a whole are a little bit distracting from some of the positivity we had. But I agree with you. The end result may be great.
Yeah.
I mean, the statement here is that the EOS block producers will fight to protect property rights. So to me, it seems positive.
Yep.
Yeah, and I guess the concern, like in the EOSX Telegram channel, was like, you know, you can just do this to anyone. And I want to echo, you know, what Chaney brought up and what Daniel said, you know, at the beginning of the show, right? Like, there needs to be proper guidelines, right? They're throwing ideas out there, right? And if like what Corey said, if this didn't happen, nobody would be thinking about these proper guidelines. Like, right. Nobody would be thinking about how to do this. And if you guys, you know, if the BPs didn't change the keys, nobody would be thinking about these guidelines either, right? And so, like, I'm kind of on the side of this being a benefit for the chain as well. But I just think that the implications of this going forward, like when the legacy people find out that like their funds could potentially be protected, I think we're like, a lot of people are jumping too far ahead. Like, I don't think that you're ever going to get 15 PPs to come in and change like one person's account. I mean, I guess it's possible. But if something is written down and it's like hard coded that this is when you do it, this is when you can't, and the community can kind of, you know, have a say in whether they agree with that, then I don't really see an issue with it per se, right? That's just my personal opinion, though, and I'm sure there's people who disagree, and I'm totally okay with it. This is why EOS is great, and these discussions are great, because everyone can have their own ideas, and we can all learn from it, right?
It'll be interesting. If you don't know, there was a $300 million plus hack on Binance yesterday, Binance Smart Chain. Yep. So it'll be interesting in a chain where we all talk about as a centralized chain, where CZ and Binance have a lot of control over what goes on. It'll be interesting to see how they react and what happens in that perspective. But I guarantee you, in talking to the few people that I know that do have funds or were investors in Bunny or own Bunny and had some other funds on Binance, they are now lobbying to have that reversed because they did not consent and they did not want that to happen. I don't think, you know, we all think that we're above it and we're all morally standard and we have these rights and we have these ethics and codes that we live by. But when it happens to you, perspectives may shift. So keep an eye on that. We'll see what happens there.
I would have never guessed 2 weeks ago that we would be nulling keys today, or not today, nulling keys on Friday. But when you're in that situation, again, going back to the analogy of the dependence on fire prevention that can result in forest fires that end up consuming the entire forest. Maybe we became too dependent on MSIGs and audits, became complacent, and this was really what we needed to kind of shake us awake and again, to Jimmy's point, this is an opportunity for us to now have this conversation and fill those gaps.
Rufus put that comment out there. I raised this actually to Eve way back in 2020 at some point, one of the Everything EOS episodes, that if there was a significant amount of funds actually residing on the EOS blockchain in BTC, could there ever be a situation where there's more value for BPs to act maliciously and concerted effort to remove all the BTC from the EOS blockchain and distribute among themselves on Bitcoin's network? He made some pretty good arguments against that. If I can find that discussion, I'll put it.
What I'll tell you is most of the block producers are not in it for money. It's a reputation thing. They have businesses that earn them far more revenue than any block rewards they'll earn on EOS. So kind of killing the reputation by doing something like that sounds to me like bad business decisions.
I personally like the idea of an outside block producer governing body being the only ones that could propose this. Like, I think for me that seems to be like, if you're a block producer, I guess you could do a backroom deal and propose it with, as well. But I like the idea of a beyond block producer being able to propose it in the case that it happens. And this is like a really deep rabbit hole, and I'm working through it as well, right? I know there's a couple people in the comments that are disagreeing with some of what we're saying. But like Daniel said at the beginning, there's no solution out there, and I think the best part about this is just to be able to throw ideas out and get the comments. So thank you, all of your comments, all of the things that are coming in and making everyone on this panel think. It's awesome, and I love that everyone has a different perspective. I just want to say that.
Yeah, all the feedback is valuable. But again, do keep in mind as you're giving feedback, it's easy to give feedback from a silo without really understanding all of the other perspectives. Again, even myself, as plugged into the ecosystem as I am, solutions I was trying to come up with, again, were stupid when I validated them with folks in a different position. So sometimes things sound like a great idea from your perspective, but it's going to take a lot of work to really validate those ideas and again come together on a consensus on what's the best path forward.
So as EOS Nation heard anything from B1, or has anybody had any idea what B1 thinks about this, and is there any impact on Bullish or potentially Profi based on this these actions?
I'm not aware of any impact to Bullish or Profi. Definitely, they're watching, I'm sure. I speak to members of their team. I know that they're aware of this and watching closely. I can't say what their specific opinion is. That's something you'd have to ask them.
One of the major proponents of that Brendan and people, and even Dane has talked about in the past, is the scalability of EOS and BTC on EOS. So it's supposedly a pretty big deal, and Profi, supposedly it's going to be a pretty big deal for EOS. We'll see how that all plays out. But if their core trust was shaking at all, it would be interesting to see how they
from
thought.
what I've seen
Kevin,
them commit about on Bullish, I don't see how this would impact. From what I've seen in what they've committed to put on EOS is an audit trail. I don't think there's any risk of their audit trail being seized.
Right, but the whole BTC on EOS and the scalability and using even what Dan says is how BTC is only you can only take it down to a SAT, right? And then after that, you can't reduce it further, but you can on EOS. So anyway, that's all I'm saying. It'd be interesting to see what they come back with. Question, one of the big losses here is Eve. Resigning from EOS Nation completely, and I read his resignation. What was the fallout? What was, I mean, I don't want you to speak for him personally, but what really was the background, or what was the reason besides trust in the community? Is that really the reason that he felt like he was going to leave? I've had some people thought. My original thought was, hey, he's taking one for the team. He's not martyring himself, but he's putting himself out there as someone to take the blame, so that there's no fallout for a lot of the other VPs.
Yeah, I can't speak for Eve, but I think that's part of it was protecting EOS Nation. Part of it was protecting the EOS network. Part of it, is taking responsibility for, EOS Nation not meeting the standards that we aspire to. Again, there were a lot of people trusting in the vault, and we failed to meet those expectations. The outcome that, we thankfully were able to recover the funds, but it shouldn't have gotten to that point. And Eve takes full responsibility for that.
What do you mean it shouldn't have gotten to that point?
We should have had better, it's hard to say. Again, we allowed ourselves to be for the audits and the MSIGs to make us comfortable with the security of the contract. There were opportunities to, add layers of protection that perhaps would have reduced the exposure. And yeah, it was at the end of the day, there was no one's fault, but the CEO takes responsibility when a company doesn't meet the expectations of their community.
Yeah.
And that's what Eve did.
I mean, if anyone asked me what's the most safe DeFi product to put my funds in on EOS, I would tell them the SX vaults, because it's so simple, it's audited, it's trusted, all these things.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, you guys went well above and beyond proactively, right? You guys got the audit and everything before it was even live. I mean, a lot of projects, they just get an audit later.
And a lot of people put their funds in there simply for the fact that they trust us. And again, Eve felt that trust was violated.
But how was the trust violated if you guys acted on behalf of the people that trusted you?
Again, there was nothing that we did that it was, we gave people a sense of security that ended up not fulfilling, even though we recovered it. But again, we're still in the process of returning funds.
I felt responsible for even recommending EOSX, John. So, there's a case there that said that, just because I told people and I had people that listened to me and put a significant amount of funds in EOSX, that I felt responsible for their getting into it. So I'm, being very careful now going forward about what I even recommend. I'll tell people about it, but I'll say this is not an endorsement. So even from that perspective, I felt responsible.
Eve hasn't told me anything differently than what he publicly said about his reasons, so I can't speculate any further than, again, what I would take him for his word, what he said in his resignation. He was doing, taking responsibility and doing what he thought was best for everybody.
Well, one part of his resignation was this idea that he's become too public or too much of a figurehead,
right?
And it's harmed.
That's part of it, yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of harmed the image or harmed the decentralization, which I mean, I thought about that and I'm like, I kind of agree with that. Like, it'll be cool to have Eve like on Eden just as Eve, not as, you know, his position as part of EOS Nation, things like that.
If you're watching, you need to remove CEO of EOS from your Telegram handle. I know that's tongue in cheek. I joke with him about that in the past. I will say though that even in discussions previously on everything EOS and otherwise, that it's hard. It's hard for EOS to get anything done. I mean, shit doesn't just happen, right? It's hard for EOS to get anything done because there is no representative. We don't have B1 as somebody that's a focal point for third parties that are looking for good source. We don't have a freaking website, guys. There's no concerted website for EOS. EOScommunity.org now.
I'm impressed with the progress we're making.
EOScommunity.org, right?
Coming together.
Change is happening, but for the last 3 damn years, we can't point to people and say, hey, you can go here for trusted information. So I agree with you, John, that maybe it's good, but there needs to be a set of people that are clearly identified, and maybe that's Eden going forward. Hopefully it is, where people can get trusted and reach out to EOS to interact and to learn and to build and to do things on. Otherwise, they look to the #1 block producer in a lot of cases over the last year, and that was EOS Nation, and as a figurehead, it was Eve. So that's just my 2 cents there. Didn't mean to kill the conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Chaney. No, yeah, right. It's like show over, just leave it there. Can you imagine that? Yeah, the first interaction I had with anyone in EOS was EOS Nation. Going back, to the before 4 times, and I just remember it being like, oh shit, I can actually talk to somebody and they will just help, right? And that's actually been my experience, with a bunch of different block producers. So I'm not sure that they're not a good source of information that they clearly are, right? Like that's the thing. And lifting it outside of it and, putting it, as something that Chris Barnes can champion, in his next round is like, hey, we can actually be, a layer, above or beside that can be sort of an unbiased, filtered thing, that doesn't necessarily have the biases or concerns that a block producer has, but like it's been working. Right. And again, all of this is iteration. We can figure out how to do all this stuff. But I just have like really, really distinct memories of going to try and find, information and help about something. And EOS Nation is where I landed. And they instantaneously helped me out. And I actually understood what was going on enough to the point where that was where, I doubled my position in EOS because like, yeah, this is really interesting. Right. Not without challenges, obviously. But, yes, I'm not sure that they aren't a good spot for that.
I had a message that is no longer his title on Telegram. It was just it was just my cache. I need to refresh my Telegram cache here.
Yeah, when you add one of the contacts,
yeah,
you're stuck forever with there.
Yeah, so that's the issue there. I see people talking about KYC in the chat and maybe opting in for dApps, and that may be the way to go going forward. Essentially, what you're describing there is probably what we've heard about Profi. So maybe there will be second layers, guys. There will be probably certain whitelisted accounts that only allow KYC'd people to interact with their dApps, and it won't be DeFi, it'll be termed Profi probably, and you'll have only certain other contracts that those accounts will be able to interact with, and off ramps. There's probably only 1 or 2 places you'll be able to take those funds and get them off the chain, which may or may not be bullish, right? So you're going to have a centralized process probably for Profi that will be somewhat different from what we see in DeFi, and whether or not those protections are the same or whether they're even needed due to the nature of Profi will be interesting to see. I do want to see these guidelines come out. I guess EOS Nation will not be providing their own set of guidance for what happens or what they think should occur in a hack, or what levels of protection that that BPs may step in and provide for different levels of DApps going forward. We'll have to do that as a community. Until that's done, I am concerned it does create a dual class between potentially projects. We'll see what happens.
I mean, I'd love to see EOS Nation publish what they think DeFi Box should do.
Yeah, I think DeFi Box is doing a lot of great things. Again, I think they already have a lot of the relationships. I'm not sure who's on their MSIG. Like EOS, the Vault had 10 MSIG partners on it. It wasn't just EOS Nation, pushing, that had skin in the game, pushing this. But we've got auditors, multiple block producers on the MSIG. Everyone on that MSIG had an interest in recovering those funds. So I would say, a good place to start as a big DeFi provider is getting buy-in from trusted MSIG partners. That'll give you a better shot. But again, there's nothing like, I can't make any guarantees, promise that if you meet a certain bar of excellence that we will promise to recover. Again, it's DPoS. I'm one voice of many in this consensus. Again, we barely pulled it off ourselves. I've already heard, whispers of let's never do that again. Again, I think the lowest hanging fruit really is to make the experience simpler and safer for the average user with better UIs, and just to guide them better away from risk. I think the guys at Greymass are doing an amazing job with Anchor, for example. With their on. I don't know if you guys have tried the iOS version of their wallet and the account creation features they've got in there, and the certificate it creates, and how you get warnings when you're interacting with with unsafe contracts. We need to, I think, spend a lot of time into all of the individual apps and members of the ecosystem making their experiences way more user friendly and understandable. That's something we're going to be focusing on all of our products. We've recently hired some designers and some more developers, and we're going to be really focusing on really raising the bar on the user experience that we offer to make sure it's dead easy for anybody who really doesn't know what they're doing and can get themselves in trouble if they go down the wrong path without the right guidance.
I mean, I've said this a few times, right? Like the EOS is one of the few chains, or EOSIO chains are one of the few chains that you can't send to an account that doesn't exist, which to me just seems to be common sense. I mean, how can you possibly send to an account that doesn't exist? However, on the opposite side, you've got block explorers that are allowing these claim your voice tokens to go through, right? And people are getting their keys swiped, and so I think that simplicity,
UIs filtering that kind of thing. That's exactly what the type of thing I'm talking about in terms of the UIs needing to get better at helping to protect users and guide them.
Yeah, I know John likes simple.
Hey Daniel, you said there's whispers among the BPs let's never do that again. I mean, I really think that if that is the route that we're going to go, we need to update the code so that it can't be done again. And
right.
if you guys want it so that you can't do it, then you should propose, a code update to remove your ability to change authorization on non-system accounts and see what the community thinks about that.
Again, I only heard this one voice I heard. So again, don't put that as a blanket statement of all BPs don't want to do this again. Again, if there's conflict, obvious. Everybody, just like the community is conflicted about this, so are the BPs. But yeah, I agree. The path forward is if the community does decide that is not something that we want our BPs to be able to do, then we need to change the code. In this case, again, code was law in this case. The code of EOS allows us to change keys. Code is still law. If we're not happy with that law as a community, we need to work together to change it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I think
sorry.
I could see, I could see like this functionality staying in, but like utilized in a extremely regulated way, where maybe like Eden is on the multi-sig, so it doesn't, it's not just the BPs, but it's also the community, for example. Like maybe Eden has veto power to make those kinds of changes go through, but it's very tricky. It's a very tricky situation, and you're always going to have people that don't agree with that or whatever.
Right.
So
again, we're definitely not going to solve it on this call. But these are the type
we're
of
not?
concussions.
Jeez.
I don't know. Maybe. You guys seem pretty smart, but I think this community is the most of any crypto community I've seen. If any community can do it, it's EOS. Like, we got some super smart people here, super passionate. Everybody wants to do what's best for EOS. It's just a matter of figuring out what that is and agreeing on it and moving forward.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to ask, like, we had Chris on from Eden yesterday or the day before, and he was talking about like how if something was ratified within the EOS community, that it wouldn't be put into place, until the next. I don't even know what you call them. What's the person who's the head of Eden?
Term, I guess.
Okay, sure. So, like, is that something that, like, because I'm a little bit behind on my Eden reading, to be honest. But is that something for people who are in the know that could potentially like be put into force? Could like John, you mentioned like maybe they sit on the board of block producers. I mean, this sounds almost like more of an American, governmental model where you've got different factions that are kind of collaborating on different levels. And I don't know, like, I like the idea, but I don't know.
Anything is possible if we reach the consensus. EOS has the flexibility. We can upgrade it however we decide that we want to. The hard part is reaching consensus.
Yeah, like right now it's 15 and 21 BPs. What if it was 15 and 21 BPs plus Eden?
Yeah, maybe that's an option.
So even, and this is totally spitballing, like giving Eden veto power on it.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Again,
That's interesting.
We'll have to see how Eden evolves and whether it gains the, like, I guess, the mandate of the community. Like if it becomes something that everyone support. If they gain consensus of the community,
right.
Then yeah, absolutely. I think, like I said, anything's on the table as long as we can come to consensus on it.
All right. I think we solved all the world's
consensus.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and John, I really love your idea as far as like, if we're actually thinking about, saying we're not going to do a thing, just coding it in, and then, like, forcing a fork if you're going to try and do the thing just seems like
we learned from the Constitution, like, if it's not enforceable, might as well not.
Right. It's just going to be like how much vested interest is going to be required to just do the thing anyway, right? And in this case, we found it, right? So and again, like, I'm actually
EPOS is all game theory, really. Like that, the mechanics are, the competing interests playing by the rules of the game. That again, so if we don't like the rules, we got to change the rules.
And I mean, there's the process to actually start doing that. I think is sort of there and growing in capacity. So
to counter Chaney that this is the worst time that this could have happened, I would say
it's
the opposite. It's the best. It's the perfect
really
time.
is
right as Eden is kind of here to take on that mandate potentially.
Eden, I will say, is not ready to take on that mandate. So give it a year, and I would agree with you, Daniel, because we had our first mock elections last week. I'm hard pressed to say now let's give Eden veto powers.
Eden's definitely not ready, but like we're iterating all this stuff at the same time, right?
This is going to be probably a year-long conversation, anyways.
Right.
Like to come to consensus.
right? There's going to be mainstream, potentially, right? Mainstream big money institutions coming in to DeFi, whatever it is on EOS, potentially, right? And now it's more likely now than it was before. And if having like the whole bunny rug pull thing, it's different when it's tens of millions than if it's $1 billion, right? And so having this happen now, so that we're actually forced to have the discussion and create the rules around it. And again, hopefully we get it right. Maybe we don't. I mean, that's welcome to us. But I think there's a better chance that this improves things than makes things worse.
I don't know that big institutions or Profi or whoever the case may be trust 15 to 21 BPs plus Eden any more than they trust 15 to 21 BP.
No,
so I'm not saying it's not the case.
Eden or not, right? Like I think the addition to ADI is just I guess the thing I was trying to say is that it's a governance layer. To being a bad thing, right? Exactly. But however you guys solve the governance situation, at least it is solvable, and better to be solving it now than in a year from now.
I mean, large institutions, they already trust lots of custodians. That's normal for them. They want custodians.
Yep.
This is why they haven't entered the space.
I mean, they're sitting on a lot more existential risk, when they're throwing around much bigger numbers, frankly, right? Potentially.
There was a person in one of my chats that just railed against Profi and how anti DeFi it was, and DeFi was the key going forward, and was lost a significant amount of money in the EOSX hack. And I said, and he said, well, I started making these other statements. And I said, you just became a proponent for Profi, and it was pretty interesting to see the light go on to say, hey, I want that custodial service in some cases, especially when it impacts my net worth and my well-being. And there are cases and lots of people that would prefer that, have that level of protection on blockchain. Whether or not this is the right case, I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying, yes, there's a huge demand for custodial and protected institutional services. Whether or not that occurs on EOS, I can't say.
Right. Well, and then if it's an opt-in layer, that everybody gets what they want, right? If you want the no KYC Wild West DeFi, it's a big internet. You can find it all over the place, right?
If it happens on EOS, I will have probably separate accounts. I'll have my opt-in account, right, and I'll have my non-opt-in account, and I will be dangerous with my non-opt-in, and use certain things with my non-opt-in account. I'll have my other account if that happens. We're all speculating here.
It's honestly between you, me, and the fish, and everybody watching, it's inevitable. Like it's only a matter of time, and it might be a long time. I don't know, but something like it will happen. There's just too much demand for it, and I mean, governments are going to eventually wake up to how all this stuff is working too. Although I'm amazed they haven't yet.
Hearing rumors of the digital yuan, I mean, in China, right? So we'll see how that all plays out.
And so much, again, going to the user again, the user experience of EOS has still not caught up to the capability of the EOS protocol. There's so much that can be built on top of EOS that you don't need to do anything to the consensus, and you can suddenly make things much safer. And again, I go back to the account, the user onboarding experience, and opportunities to set up their accounts with multi-sigs and timers, and all this functionality exists in the protocol layer, but you have to be a super EOS nerd to understand how to use them. I imagine it won't be long before the UI start catching up and make that much more accessible to the everyday average person.
What do you think is the largest missing pieces that you would like to see on the UI side?
For me, the biggest one is user onboarding. The best I've seen is Anchor's iOS app. That currently is unfortunately only available for iOS users, but I imagine they're going to be sharing it with the rest of their users too. yeah, there's a lot of the times there's this catch-22. You can't create an EOS account unless you have an EOS account, and then you gotta use a block explorer to. It's really clunky for the average. So I hired, for example, I'll give you an anecdote. We recently hired some new designers and developers on our team to help solve this for our products. And on the first day, I just gave them a little task: go create an EOS account, set up a wallet, and create a name on EOS name service and deposit some funds into the vault. Thankfully, it wasn't a lot of funds. But
too soon.
Yeah, sorry, that was probably not. But they had they could. It was almost impossible for them to figure as a new person coming, and you give them a website, go to this site, this EOS name service site, and get it. Like, what do I do? They're looking. What wallet do I download? How do I? Okay, I got the Wombat wallet, but now I can't export my keys. Oh, okay, I paid to export my keys. Now I moved my keys to, and it's like they spent all day just figuring out how to get their wallet set up. That is the biggest, I think, hurdle that at least that's what EOS Nation. One of the things we're going to be focusing on, making sure all of our products have super easy onboarding experiences that guide the user, the everyday, mom, grandma. We're going to hold their hand through this to help them set up their account in a way that's safe and secure and, keeps them out of trouble as much as possible.
Yeah. And honestly, you guys already have enough on your plate. It's the kind of thing that other teams, other projects should be able to handle. It's really a big issue. I think maybe lack of funding is part of the issue. Mm-hmm. I think Wombat, you basically can get a free EOS account, but you can't export it to another wallet. But thankfully, Wombat works with any site that has scatter integration. So that's probably the easiest way to get an account.
I'd love to see more wallets supporting the Anchor protocol and Scatter.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
From the perspective of us building apps, continuing to support Scatter is a headache. We would love it if all the wallets like Wombat switched to the Anchor Scatter or Anchor protocol, the ESR, is that what they call it? Mm-hmm. And that would make, again, the experience much more consistent across all the wallets, and I think much better. I think there's a lot of, Scatter is an old depreciated technology, not getting much love anymore. We should be doing our best to get everyone to migrate to the newer tech.
I mean, that's true, but also like Token Pocket and MyKey, and a lot of these wallets out there are built on the Scatter protocol. Yeah. They're built on the Scatter protocol, and they're used very widely, especially in Asia, extremely popular. Pizza.finance, they just added Anchor support like a month ago, and there was just Scatter type logins, before that, because that was all their users, right? So if everyone was using one protocol, that would be great, but that's just never going to happen. Yep. So if everyone is using Anchor or Scatter protocol, and that's good enough.
And I'm not saying everyone using Anchor wallet, but I'm saying ESR is much superior to Scatter. It would be, and again, but to your point, they've already got plenty of customers. There's nothing in it for them to switch from Scatter if it's working for them. But from the perspective of someone developing dApps that their wallets need to interact with, it would be easier for me to support their wallet if they used ESR. And I think there's perhaps some value in there in having a wallet that more dApps can easily integrate with and create a better experience. But I know it's going to take some time again, and that's an individual journey. Each wallet provider will have to go on and decide.
Yeah, and for example, just as an example from a developer's perspective, like EOSPowerUp.io supports Anchor and Scatter login, and in order to support Scatter login, I had to use I had to use EOS.js,
Mhm.
but I actually don't use EOS.js in any other part of the
Right.
application. It's all using the GrayMass libraries.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it's like this code duplication, right? It's
Mhm.
not. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, but I would actually go so far. Yeah, I mean, I would actually go so far as to say, like, maybe we should just improve that scatter library so that it
Maybe.
plugs into the GrayMass libraries.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
actually, our team rewrote it recently for one of the projects we're doing. I'm not sure if it's in a
Ooh.
state to share. I think it's more of a little pet project, but
Mhm.
we were struggling so much with the standard scatter library, we just rewrote it.
Right.
But again, that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Ideally, you know, the anchor the GrayMass team is doing an incredible job on their standard and continuing to improve it, whereas scatter is stagnant.
Right.
Hasn't improved in years. But again, yeah, this is going to be a business decision for all the individual wallet providers. But that's, you know, I guess if I could say something I would hope for that would make my life easier, and I think the
Yeah.
experience for every user better. That's one of my wishes.
Totally.
As Nick says, scatter is a mess. Yeah, it's very scattered. It's really but yeah, like you said, it's been what, three years now that nothing's changed. I mean, they did a good job like back in the day, but like
Hey, they like all the credit to them. Yeah, they were the only option we had for the longest time. You know, so like without scatter, a lot of people wouldn't have been able to vote for the first time, do the first transactions. Like I was a dedicated scatter user for many years.
Yeah. Nathan and Rami found some other more value-added opportunities. That's all there is to it.
That's right.
Well, and to Chaney's earlier point, right? They never got the funding. They never got that ability to be able to. And there's lots of dApps out there, lots of projects out there that don't get it, right?
So one person did ask here, Daniel, what is the ETA for refunding of people that did not, let's say, deposit additional EOSX tokens to the platform?
So for those who did not deposit or withdraw after the hack is going to be a little more simplified. They'll all be the first to get their funds back. Anyone who did deposit or withdraw post hack, it's going to be case by case basis to make sure that everybody. And there's also OTC happening after, you know, people moving their tokens. So all these things we have to consider. So basically, if your balance of SX tokens didn't change pre-hack versus post-hack, it's super simple. You'll be the first to get your funds returned.
Will they just show up in their accounts?
Yes, we're going to be just sending it back. As for timelines, I can't speculate how long it will take. Again, we need to reach consensus again, 15 out of 21 to first return the funds from the hacked accounts to the vault. Last I checked, I think we had 3 signatures. We only started, we posted the retrospective last night in Western time, just the morning for them in Asia. They're still, processing the retrospective, analyzing the MSIG. It's going to take some time. But we'll be definitely moving as fast as we possibly can to get the funds all back and returned to the rightful owners.
And you say case by case basis. There's no need for them to reach out to you. You'll do the analysis. Or
we're gonna take care of that all. We're gonna post the snapshots so everyone can look at them and confirm that matches their understanding.
I know there were some out there, even on DeFi box, that were available for trade and things. So
yeah, so we're factoring all of that in for sure.
Okay, best of luck.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's a mammoth of a project. So
yeah, Denny's gonna have some work on his hands coming up.
Just a shout out to Cryptowriter for letting us host episodes like this. They're awesome. If you go into their Telegram chat tomorrow, they'll probably do some quizzes, and if you watch the episode, you got a chance at maybe getting some Finney coins if you answer the question right. Thanks to our panelists, thanks to our panelists, Chaney, Daniel, and John. Actually, it's interesting because John will be back next week. We're going to have a roundtable on Eden OS as well, and we're going to talk about the first, I guess, mock elections and what happened on that side of things. So I think it's a nice connection. Probably a little bit lighter than today's discussion for y'all, but honestly, thanks for joining us, because this is really pertinent information that everyone has been thinking about, and it's been on everyone's mind. So I like the fact that we can have this open discussion.
I'm happy to be able to come and get this all off my chest. It's been weighing on me the last since the attack happened. Has been the number one thing on my mind, trying to figure out how EOS Nation moves forward. So yeah, I feel a lot better now with the retrospective out, having this opportunity to share our perspective. Now it's just time to have that conversation and as a community, how we move forward.
I echo that. Thanks, Daniel.
I think it's time for the chop.
All right, rock and roll. Thanks, guys.
Do I do this? How does that